Well, Nikole Hannah-Jones, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm so delighted that you have taken the time to talk to me about 1619, which I know that by now it's been on the bestsellers list for so long, and you've been around the country, you've been around in different parts of the world. I'm thinking this woman is talked out.
I'm never too talked out to talk with you, and I'm honored to be on here and discussing this work with you.
So, can you tell us how working at the New York Times and making the decision that you wanted this to be at the forefront of something that the magazine would launch out into the world, how that came to be?
I feel like I've been working towards the 1619 project since I was 15 years old. That's when I first came across the date 1619. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, in a very white state, but in a small town that there were still enough Black folks to segregate us. So I grew up on the Black side of town. I was bused to white schools, and um, my high school offered a one semester Black Studies elective, and that class changed my life. I came across the date 1619, and people who know me know I've been obsessed with that date since then. That date stood both for a legacy and a lineage that Black people had been here even before the Mayflower in 1620. And yet, every child learns about the Mayflower, but the White Lion in 1619 had been completely erased from our national story. So I feel like so much of my journalism has been about trying to show the way this hidden history, hidden in plain sight history, is shaping our society, whether we grapple with it or not.
I think what is so profound about, and when I read the essay, was it 2019? It came out, right? 2019. What was so profound about it is that you and the team of essayists that you chose were able to connect the dots to answer the question that so many people pose to you and that I've heard over the years. What's that got to do with me? Why do I need to know about that? That has nothing to do with now. And what you all have been able to do through the 1619 project is allow us to see how it has affected everything,
Yeah,
even traffic. I mean, that was the
even
thing that got
traffic.
me, even traffic. Can you talk about that
Absolutely.
essay? Even
Yeah.
traffic.
The 1619 Project is answering that question every Black person gets, which is slavery was a long time ago. Why don't you get over it? So I wanted to create a project that showed how do you get over something that is as foundational to your society as anything can be foundational. So we came up with a bunch of different areas that we hoped would be surprising, and then trace them back. And yes, including traffic in Atlanta. This is an essay by Princeton historian Kevin Cruz, and it talks about when they were designing the freeway system in Atlanta, they didn't design a system to move people from one place to another as efficiently as possible. They designed a system to help segregate, right? To create the spatial barriers between white and Black communities. So they ran freeways directly through often prosperous Black communities, and they created them to create these physical barriers to stop neighborhoods from integrating and from Black people from having easy access to white neighborhoods in Atlanta.
Robert Moses in New York City, making the tunnels only so high so that the buses couldn't go through, so that Black and Hispanic people wouldn't be able to take the bus to get to the parks on the other side.
Absolutely. And you could see this, in Atlanta where why we haven't seen the expansion of public transit. So the population of Atlanta grows and grows and grows, and yet public transit does not go out onto the white suburbs because there is a desire not to allow Black people to have easy access to these white suburban rings. If you begin to read the 1619 Project and the texts that underlie it, you see that so much of the architecture of our society can actually be traced back to the legacy of slavery.
Of all of the egregious acts against Black people that have occurred since slavery, including those 100 years of Jim Crow and violence and domestic terrorism, what is the thing that strikes you the most as the most devastating?
Dorothy Roberts' essay on race, where so often when we talk about slavery, we talk about the violence against men, um, but the violence that Black women faced was often a sexual violence. We
Hmm.
outlaw importing Africans into America to be slaves in 1808, and yet by the 1860s, we have the largest population of enslaved people in the world. That happens through forced reproduction, where Black women, enslaved women, were forced through sexual assault and sexual violence and sexual coercion to reproduce slavery, literally through their wombs. Um, that's some of the most, I think, traumatizing reading and reporting uh, that I've done.
You start out on page 11 of this profound book saying the United States is a nation founded on both an ideal and a lie. Our Declaration of Independence, approved on July 4th, 1776, proclaims that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. But the white men who drafted those words did not believe them to be true for the hundreds of thousands of Black people in their midst. Are you most fascinated by the fact that even when those words were decreed and they did not apply to Black people, somehow we heard and believed that they did?
Yes. I mean, that to me is the beauty of the American story, if we can tell the American story from the bottom and not from the top. Um, Here we have a people who are literally um, only written in the Constitution as property, and who none of these words were meant to include them. And yet they are actors in the revolutionary period, and they are reading and hearing these words of liberation and saying, actually, that's hypocrisy. And we're going to actually take those words literally. What we don't think about is the Declaration of Independence is a succession document. This is the document where the colonists, the white colonists, are laying out all of the crimes that they believe the British have committed against them, to say, this is why we need to break off from you and have our own freedom.
Why do you think there has been such resistance? I mean, has that surprise, has the level of vitriol, attack, and resistance to the 1619 Project and what you're trying to say about Black Americans' contribution to this country, has it surprised you?
Absolutely. I knew there would be resistance, and I knew there would be criticism and critique. And frankly, there should be. This was an ambitious project. We were attempting to make an evocative argument. And obviously, the reason the project exists in the first place is we have not wanted to grapple with this past, and certainly we don't want to acknowledge the way that past is shaping our present. But I couldn't have ever imagined the full weight of the power that has come down against this project. In speaking with other historians, no one can think of a single text that has been banned by name in so many different laws. The President of the United States issued an entire executive order against the project. Two of the most powerful senators in the country
Started a
started
whole
a
commission
coalition
against it.
against it. We've seen this whole anti-critical race theory propaganda campaign arise because of the project. I've been a journalist for 20 years, and I've written about racial inequality my entire career, but nothing I've ever done has received this type of response.
On page 54 that she says, whether free or enslaved, Black women were portrayed as sexually uh, licentious, always consenting, and therefore unrapeable.
Legally, an enslaved woman could not be raped by law. That Black women had no right to bodily autonomy, and actually, any way that a Black woman could be impregnated, no matter by whom, was considered to be a good thing. So we actually had a legal system that said Black women were unrapeable.
One of the things that I think is so important is that you write about the American public having an outdated and vague sense of the past. And yet, the 2019 Washington Post poll found that despite their meager knowledge of slavery, two-thirds of Americans believe that the legacy of slavery still affects our society today. So I
Yeah.
know that this is an effort to help people learn the how and the why. Have you felt that it has been received by enough people that it's actually making a difference?
Absolutely. The fact that I've been traveling all over the country, and what I hear again and again from people, different races, different ages, rural, suburban, urban, is they say, I just never knew. I never knew any of this. And I felt like there was more to the story than what I was getting, but I never knew. And once you know, I just think you support different policies. I mean, this really what it's about. I know that this project is having an impact by the enemies that this project has drawn.
I want to read what you write on page 476. You write because I want to read this because it, for me, encapsulates, I think, the essence of what you're trying to do with the 1619 Project. You say citizens inherit not just the glory of their nation, but its wrongs too. A truly great country does not ignore or excuse its sins. It confronts them and then works to make them right. Do you think that's going to happen anytime soon with the state of our nation right now?
I do not. I think we are in a once in a generations fight for the soul of our country. I don't know that our democracy is going to survive what's happening right now. And I ended the book that way because I do want us to understand we have choice, that we don't have to be that country of our past. And um, the country we live in was created. And so we can create something new. And I want to leave us with a charge that we have agency, that it is up to us. But I also fear that we are not rising to the moment.
You say, in the end, I want to thank the ancestors and the more than 30 million descendants of American slavery. I never forget who this work is for and to whom I belong.
That's right.
I love that line. We must always hold our heads up high because we come from and we are a great people.
Yes.
Thank you, Nikole, for your unwavering courage, for your fearlessness and being a powerful force for positive change in this country. And your work, your intellect, your strength is going to literally, I think, change the way people see our history. It already has done that.
Thank you.